So you boot up the new fighting game that you just bought, you learn a couple combos, you learn how to safely confirm into those combos, and you find the plus and block options for your character so you can open up your opponent into your combos. Now I think this is where intermediate players often stop developing their simple frame trap offense, and instead might turn their attention towards more complicated setups in order to try and improve at the game. While there's nothing wrong with that, and hitting your opponent with super elaborate things can be very fun, at the end of the day, conditioning and reading your opponent is at the core of fighting game offense. I want to use this video to discuss some less frequently touched on components of basic fighting game offense. So you win neutral, either getting your opponent to block something you want them to block, or maybe you scored a knockdown. What is the next thing you want to do? In any fighting game, you usually want to use your advantage to force your opponent to guess or react to something where they as the defender need to take a risk to escape. Using your character's plus on block options allow you to maintain your advantage and continue offense against a blocking opponent, which is why they are one of the first things many people often look for when learning a new game. But what if your character has multiple plus on block options? How do you decide which one to use? In the end, it might not really matter, and it is often good not to overcomplicate things in fighting games, but I just want to offer some ideas that could help you put a little bit more intentionality behind the buttons you press. Both of these buttons from Saberwolf are +2 on block, but they differ quite a lot in other aspects that we'll talk about, with the first one being Pushback. Pushback is an often neglected or underexplored aspect of moves by intermediate level players. When you go to Fighting Game Wiki to look for data on moves, you'll see lots of hitboxes, frame data, and comments, but I'm not sure if I've ever seen pushback data documented on a wiki before. Probably one of the reasons why pushback isn't frequently explored on offense is other characteristics. But back to KI. One reason you would choose to melee with a crouching medium kick over standing medium kick is that crouching medium kick still leaves Wolf in normal throw range, while stand medium kick does not. So the option to choose is dependent on a combination of how you expect your opponent to retaliate, as well as how you want to condition them to respond to a similar situation in the future. Crouching medium kick allows for an immediate strike throw mix-up, or if your opponent is prone to throw teching, then you can shimmy nearly the entire cast off this button. On the other hand, standing medium kick allows for an immediate frame trap or micro walk-up throw, but it pushes immediately out of all normal throw ranges, which makes bait and reversals safer, as your opponent can't throw you or open you up low since there's no need to shimmy. Wolf is also infamous for his +4 on block, 5-frame startup crouching light kick, which in the corner allows for 2 crouching light kicks and still leaves Wolf in throw range, or 3 crouching light kicks and you can be in Kara throw range. However, a much more neglected button is Wolf's standing light kick, which is +3 on block, 7-frame normal, which has the lowest amount of pushback out of all of Wolf's normals. Standing light kick does move Wolf's yellow push box forward, which causes it to have more pushback than crouching light kick when point blank, but one crouching light kick followed by a series of standing light kick frame traps has low pushback and allows Wolf to still throw after 5 normals are blocked, which extends the number of strike throw mix-ups the opponent has to take compared to when only using crouching light kick. Like bro, having to hold 5 strike throw mix-ups in a row is actually despicable. The one downside of using repeated standing light kick pressure is that there's a 4-frame gap, which means that Wolf must have frame perfect pressure to counter hit throw techs, while the opponent does not, since there's no offensive buffers on normals in KI, while there's a small buffer on defense for actions out of block stun. An easier execution compromise could be to alternate crouching light kick and standing light kick in pressure sequences, and still be in Kara throw range after 4 strikes. Moving over to Street Fighter 6, we can find the same thing. In Street Fighter 6, +frame normals aren't near as plentiful as in a game like KI, but we can use Drive Rush to get around this. Luke's crouch medium punch is +1, and his Drive Rush crouch light punch is +2 on block. However, Drive Rush reduces the pushback on normals, so while Luke can typically shimmy off his -2 crouching light punch, he cannot off his +2 Drive Rush crouch light punch. So choosing to melee with a crouch medium punch, which always pushes out of throw range, or a Drive Rush crouching light punch sets up different situations in mind games. An important thing to note is that while Drive Rush Crouching Light Punch cannot shimmy an immediate throw tech, it does shimmy a delay tech, which is a very common defensive strategy used in Street Fighter. This works even if the tech is only delayed by 2 frames. An additional layer is that Luke can do a back heavy punch suppressor to beat immediate throw techs off Drive Rush Crouching Light Punch. So this is something that can be used to call out your opponent for going for an immediate throw tech if they have the game knowledge that Luke can't shimmy in this specific situation. But if you just wanted to avoid this mind game altogether, you can use Drive Rush Crouch Medium Punch instead, which is plus enough on block and has enough pushback to always be able to show for a shimmy without trying to play around your opponent's throw tech timings. So as you can see, even deliberately choosing which button to use for plus frames off a Drive Rush cancel can set defensive expectations for your opponent, and it is up to you to use these options to condition and read their defensive habits for maximum reward. Another aspect of buttons often overlooked by intermediate players is how easily can you confirm into a combo if your opponent decides they just don't want to block you plus pressure options. One weakness of certain strike throw characters in KI like Tusk or Riptor is that their plus on block tick throw light buttons are not plus muff on normal hit to confirm into a combo. Lights in KI are almost all not cancel confirmable due to small cancel windows, so holding up versus characters like these can be a strong defensive choice compared to throw teching since you are forcing your opponent to just send their cancel if they want to get a combo. This is not a weakness shared by Saberwolf, as his crouching light kick and standing light kick are both +5 on normal hit, which allows for link confirms against characters holding up, and this in conjunction with him having one of the farthest normal throw ranges in the game is why I believe he is clearly the strongest strike throw character in Killer Instinct. Wolf's other plus buttons, like standing medium kick, crouching medium kick, and overpower, are also confirmable options on normal hit, whether by link or cancel confirm due to larger cancel windows. KI has no offensive buffer on normals, as previously mentioned, so confirming off crouching light kick is a one frame link, while confirming off standing light kick is easier as it is +7 on hit. So depending on how crispy your confirms are feeling that day can impact which plus normal you decide to pressure with. In Street Fighter 6, confirmability isn't as big of a concern since many pressure options are plus enough for confirms on normal hit and there is a generous offensive buffer for links, so dropping combos is far less likely than in Killer Instinct. However, one major difference in this game is the type of combo varies that you can confirm on different buttons. Let's say your opponent wakes up backdash expecting a meaty throw, which gives you a normal hit on your meaty pressure. Off regular crouch medium punch, Luke has to spend 3 bars of drive to get his better corny carry and Oki combos. However, if Luke does meaty drive rush crouch medium punch instead, then he can confirm into his better combo options without needing to spend additional resources. If you really think your opponent will be blocking, perhaps your character does get stronger pressure options by using non-confirmable moves, but if you're less sure about what your opponent might be going for on defense, then pressuring with more confirmable options might sacrifice pressure for a stronger way to punish them not blocking. This third topic applies to your pressure choice in a wide variety of ways. The first thing I want to mention is that in many fighting games, some reversal options are balanced around having slower startup, and faster recovery offensive options can safely pressure against them. Often these are light buttons, but in old version of KI this even included some big silly overhead heavy options. You will often pressure this way in specific matchups to set the tone early because your opponent has less defensive options that beat it, although typically these safer pressure options lead to lower damage or less reward on hit depending on the game. I think a more interesting way that animation length impacts pressure choice in fighting games revolves around human reaction times and the psychology of your opponent. These fast recovery options not only recover faster on whiff, but often the block stop and block stun are also low, which gives your opponent less time to react and respond. That is why tick throws, even on minus on block light normals, are very common. When the block stun is low, it gives little time for your opponent to assess the situation. On the other side of the spectrum, we've already talked about Wolf's +2 on block medium normals, but we have barely mentioned his +2 on block heavy normal known as Overpower. While all these options leave Wolf at +2, Overpower has an insanely long animation with a couple years of block stun. The reason there is so much block stun is likely because the developers wanted the button to be very punishable when whiffing, so it needs a lot of block stun to compensate the high recovery while still letting the button be plus on block. When people are blocking this normal, they got time to assess the situation, evaluate their options, leave to pick up some fast food, and still have time to come back and input their defensive option. I don't really have any scientific evidence to support this, but in my experience with playing Saberwolf, players are much more likely to throw tech or hold up after blocking crouching light kick, while after blocking an overpower, they're more likely to backdash or reversal. Backdash and DP are inputs that generally take a larger number of frames to input, so I think players subconsciously are more likely to use them after blocking a long animation move like overpower since their brain realizes that they have time to respond. If I notice that my opponent is reacting with backdash or DP after blocking a crouch light kick, I take note that my opponent is locked in specifically looking to represent those options after a light normal, and I try to take that into account when pressuring them the next time. Again, I only have anecdotal evidence to support this, but I think this can be a huge factor in choosing which pressure options to go for when looking to bait certain responses out of your opponent, especially when the character has options with such large difference in animation length like Wolf does with his crouching light kick and overpower. One final thing I want to mention is that I've already talked a lot about using meaty drive rush pressure with Luke in Street Fighter 6, but there's one big downside to using drive rush as a meaty. It has lots of startup that is susceptible to wake up reversals on reaction. However, drive rush is also commonly used to bait reversals, so there's still a little RPS situation going on here, playing around player reactions and resources. So it is definitely a viable option in certain situations, given you have conditioned the respect from your opponent. This final section is very basic, but it's definitely something I see get overlooked quite often. Your entire goal in a fighting game is to deplete your opponent's health bar before they can deplete yours, so choosing pressure options to maximize damage can decide a round, giving you a condition to your opponent to not block. Wolf's Overpower is a high damaging plus on block heavy button, but it has weaknesses in its high recovery, low number of active frames, and movement of Wolf forward. This allows it to often be punishable when backdashed. Wolf has no other plus on block heavies, but he does have a crouching heavy kick, which is -4 on block, +1 on hit, and has a whopping 6 active frames. Wolf can frame kill off forward throw with a jump to auto time this button meaty to be plus on block and plus enough on hit to link confirm into a combo. Wolf's crouching heavy kick also does more raw damage than uncharged overpower as a combo starter, has lower number of recovery frames to keep it safe against backdash, and when not in the corner, it pushes out of throw ranges, which can be very useful in certain matchups. Choosing to meaty with this option does lead to weaker strike throw pressure than crouch light kick, but the damage and confirmability on hit are much better, while still leaving Wolf at frame advantage if blocked. In Street Fighter 6, this can be even more important because drive gauge damage can sometimes be more important than getting actual damage. And the strength of the button in the game has huge variance in the amount of drive gauge damage it does. Cammy and Bison having plus on block heavies in this game is very strong, and for some reason, Bison gets 2 of them. Luke has a few common setups that allow him to time a meaty heavy kick where it is either 0 or plus on block, and on hit it can link confirm into another heavy button. The damage difference can be staggering in this game. If you think your opponent is going to jump out of the corner, why not just meaty them with your highest damage option? Luke also has pressure with spaced heavy punch and a heavy sandblast that can be plus, and does a good grip of drive gauge damage on block. However, this is very susceptible to reaction perfect parry punish, so you can either try and play around their reactions, or jail into light sandblast to be minus, but still doing good drive gauge damage. The reward of this option on hit isn't amazing, and you need to send it since Luke's heavy punch is not very hit confirmable compared to other Shadow heavy punches, but against players that aren't perfect parrying sandblast, it can be very strong in the corner. One final thing I want to mention about Street Fighter 6 is that with the constant defensive threat of perfect parry, you need to make sure you are throwing your opponent enough so they aren't just perfect parrying your obvious frame kill setups. And once they start respecting the throw, you can start to take advantage of your meaty setups in the future. You kind of need to throw people a lot in this game. There are many players that feel stuck when reaching the intermediate level plateau in fighting games, and they continue to just tilt queue, but that's not going to help them improve. I think one thing that can help you keep improving is to be more mindful of your offensive choices and make sure there's intentionality even behind the smallest decisions. When reviewing your replays, take note of how you're pressuring your opponent and how your opponent is responding. What options does your choice cover? What are you conditioning your opponent to respond with in the future? And are you punishing your opponent's wrong guesses as hard as you can? The options I discussed in this video are different ways to use plus frames to not only cover different defensive options, but also condition your opponent to respond differently. When faced with a new opponent you have no idea about their habits, generally the lower reward pressure options are safer while covering more options. You use these earlier on to collect data while conditioning, so that once you have a more solid read on how your opponent likes to play, you can pull out the higher reward options to capitalize on it. And the beauty of it is that even if your read wasn't right, these plus options all give you different advantage situations where you can use them to condition and add layers to your offense. All of these options might leave you at +2, but the situations they leave you at are most definitely not equal. Thanks for watching.